We're back now at 7:42, and we have to say it's with a heavy heart that we remember a very dear friend and colleague this morning. John Palmer, a fixture at NBC News for 4 decades, died Saturday after a brief illness. Now, John worked as a correspondent and was the longtime news anchor right here on the Today Show, a steadfast reporter whose gracious presence helped all of us usher in a new day.
In the news this morning, in Lockerbie's Congress will begin a president.
His warmth and reassuring delivery were fixtures on Today.
An official good morning to John Palmer.
Thank you, Jane.
For 7 years, nearly 2,000 mornings, John Palmer guided our viewers through moments of triumph and tragedy.
There was a huge, bright ball of fire, an explosion in the air.
In 1986, John anchored the first hours of NBC's coverage of the Challenger space shuttle disaster. His presence felt even when he wasn't present at all.
I tell you, to have our John back is a thrill. I mean,
He walks in this morning and says, I was watching you guys from my veranda.
Yeah.
And it was delightful. Very good program. So I wish I was back on the veranda.
He took his work, but not always himself, seriously.
Pledgers of the SS Norway, Mr. Palmer, where are you?
Good morning, Brian, Jane. I can see really how tough it's been for you guys all week long on the pool deck.
A native of Kingsport, Tennessee, John spent nearly 40 years at NBC. A career newsman who covered wars. A voice of reason in unreasonable times.
John Palmer, NBC News, and the Troodos Mountains.
Cairo, Damascus, on the Eiffel Tower.
After years traveling the world, John's foreign policy experience landed him at the White House, where he'd go on to cover 5 presidents.
We did this a lot of times. The news reporters never found out about it.
John loved fishing, golf, and was a sucker for old blue eyes.
All of me.
But his greatest love was his family. John met his wife Nancy in NBC's Washington bureau in 1979, where she worked for nightly news. Together they raised 3 daughters, Molly, a producer here at Today, Carter, who works in the entertainment industry, and Hope, a budding journalist at the NBC Washington bureau. He never missed an opportunity to boast about his beautiful daughters.
And she was born on December 10th, and now she's proudly with the Today Show.
John's legacy lives on in his family and ours. Bryant Gumbel and Jane Pauley are with us now. Guys, good morning to both of you.
Thank you.
I'm doing great, thank you. 7 years. You guys were a team with John Palmer, grounded, humble.
We were
what
a
other
family
words am I
with
missing?
John, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you hit it right on the button. John was a gentleman with a capital G. I mean, he was just gracious in every respect. Just a professional, warm man. You always kind of knew what you were getting. I always used to say that John was the adult of our family, you know? I mean, Jane was the kid's sister, I was the troublesome brother, and we had 2 eccentric uncles, and then there was John. I mean, John was the adult of the group.
Do you know, I got the news from a text from Tom Brokaw, and just telling me the news, and then something, and he finished it with, such a sweet man. And it struck me, I thought about that all day, how with such respect for his professionalism, and yet without hesitation, Tom would describe him as a sweet man, and he certainly was.
I was a viewer during those years, and I remember watching him, and he made it look so effortless. He sat there at the news desk and delivered the news in a way that made you feel like he was just sitting in your living room talking to you. And yet he took it very, very seriously.
I would love to have his legacy. I remember him the 7 years we were together, but I remember him covering the Challenger from standing outside my own kitchen. It was, the teacher, Krista McAuliffe. He was on television reporting it because he was still in the building. And then I remember Desert One, the horrible, aborted attempt to rescue the Iran hostages. My husband woke me up, what was it, midnight, 1 o'clock, to tell me John broke the news because he happened to be going by the White House and saw a light on it.
I think that's what people forgot about John, as your piece pointed out, that John had traveled the world and had been a war correspondent and had a number of notable achievements before he basically settled down to kind of watch over us. And I mean, he was just such a wonderful, gracious man. I mean, Jane and I were talking about yesterday. I had come in from walking the dogs, and I log in, and I see this headline, and it says, NBC News anchor dies suddenly. Thinking, oh my God. I mean, this can't be. There's no way in the world this can be good. I was stunned. I didn't know John was ill. I mean, it was a shock.
Just in terms of humility, a little anecdote. When we all got together for the 60th anniversary of this program, we had that big party. There was one part of the party where a photographer said we wanted the whole group up for a picture, and John was standing off on the sidelines. And I looked at him and I said, John, he goes, they don't want me up there. I said, of course. He was one of these guys who never thought he was as big a deal as he was.
He took me aside one day after the show, and he said, he says, Jane, don't take this the wrong way, but does it ever amaze you that Kirk Douglas knows who you are? And I think a guy from Kingsport, Tennessee, he always pinched himself, what am I doing here? But thank God he was.
But you know, I had an opportunity to talk by email with his wife Nancy last night, and she said that he died the way you'd want to. You know, that he had his family around him, he had his girls around him, and they told stories, and he died peacefully.
And we want to pass along our condolences to John's family. He will be missed, and we love you all. We'll be right back. Thanks, guys.